selling a home is already an emotional process. But factor in that that home belonged to a loved one that passed away, or it was your childhood home that you grew up in, and now mom and dad is no longer there. And you're faced with the situation of not only having to deal with grieving the loss, but also what to do with this home. That adds a whole different layer to selling real estate. And that is what we're going to discuss today on Casa, Familia, and Legacy. I am attorney Alina Nunez, and I am here to bring a little bit of real estate, a little bit of family issues, and a little bit of the future legacy that we're building, put it all together, and bring information to you as a community so you can inform yourself, prepare yourself, and hopefully avoid a lot of headaches in the future. And today I am very proud to have with me Notice Forcade Martin, who is a real estate agent who specializes, and we have worked together on probate listings, and dive a little bit into that topic of what you have to do or what are the issues that come up when dealing not only with selling a home, but also more specifically due to a probate and a recent death of a loved one. So thank you so much, Notice, for being here today with us on Casa, Familia, and Legacy. If you can take a few minutes and tell us about yourself, your background, and your experience.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Alina. I appreciate being here. I'm super honored and grateful. And yes, so as you said, I'm Notice Forcade Martin, of course, residential real estate agent, and I do real estate as well as specialize in probate listings particularly. And besides that, I am a mom to 3 amazing, beautiful children. I'm a wife, and all the great things that women typically hold the title for, right?
Yes. Well, all those different hats we wear, all the things that we're juggling, being entrepreneur women, having our business, running our business, and as well as family, everything in all those roles.
Exactly.
So you definitely know what it takes to be there and try to take care of and resolve all these issues, whether at work or at home.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit of why within the real estate world, what drew you into specifically also focusing some of your area in probate listing specifically?
Sure. So that's a question I get asked quite often, as you know, that this area of real estate or law is pretty sad, right? And what I realized is that residential real estate is very normal. It's very, it's very transactional. And for the most part, we have a lot of great agents in Miami and South Florida particularly, right? So I realized that there's a specific area of real estate where families need compassion, the attorneys need a good ally, and so that's where probate transactions came in. I saw that there was an opportunity there to really bridge a gap for those families where they need a guide to help them sell real estate that is involved in probate. And then the attorneys, again, need someone that can help them really make this seamless for those clients, for those families.
Absolutely. And it's really hard to find professionals that know the process, that know how it works, and can be an ally to us and help us bridge, that knowledge to the person who's looking to sell a property or even buy a property.
Right.
So for those that maybe aren't familiar with the term probate, don't know what it means, can you just describe a little bit what a probate listing entails or what it means?
Absolutely. So when someone passes and they did not have their affairs organized, they may not have had the proper title done on the property, they may have not had the proper estate planning done. What typically happens is that they're going to have this property who's in their name going to an estate, what is called an estate, right? And the probate process per se is just the legal process that estate has to go through in order for the property to pass on to whoever the beneficiaries, the legal heirs are for that person that passed away. So the probate listing is when they have a property, the person that passed has a property, they didn't have their affairs organized, or they did have a will maybe, but it still needs to be approved by the court that property is going to pass legally onto these specific individuals who are going to be the beneficiaries. So that's what a probate listing is. It's a property that's involved when that person didn't have their affairs organized.
And that's a good point that you raise, and it's a myth that I'm constantly trying to debunk and let people know. Just because you have a will done, a last will and testament, does not mean that your property or your assets, because probate's not just for the property.
Right.
Yes. It's typically the house is the biggest asset in an estate.
Right.
Right. It has the highest value, but it includes everything. It can include bank accounts, personal property, cars,
Art.
Jewelry, anything like that.
Right.
But a very big misconception that people have is, oh, I had a last will and testament. It says it goes to my daughter or my son or whatever. So that's it. Once I die, it goes to them. No. Probate is the legal process of having that will go through the court system, making sure it's valid, it was signed correctly, it doesn't violate any of the laws of the state, in order then to distribute. So you still have to go through probate if you have a will, which is a big misconception. People think, oh, I have a will, I'm good to go.
Right.
No.
Right.
So talk to us a little bit about what are some of the common, let's say, issues that people might face when dealing with a probate listing, whether it's, maybe a buyer or a seller.
Sure. So I'm going to focus on the seller part, because usually the family, there's various reasons why they may want to sell the property and not necessarily keep it in the family. And it may have to do with the fact that they're not even here. They don't live in South Florida, so they're out of state. They cannot really take on the burden of having to maintain that property or don't want to become a landlord. Another reason may be that if they are local in South Florida, they don't need the property. They have their own. They don't. So they may want to dispose of it. And as a family, they have to make the decision, right? What is the motivation to sell that property? The issues that they come up with are, if it's occupied by a tenant, they have to worry about that. If there's belongings that are still in the property, they have to worry about what's going to happen with those belongings. So, of course, we've dealt with scenarios where there were hoarder situations.
Yes.
Or the person passed away suddenly and everything is as they left it.
Yeah.
And they have to now go through sorting through all these belongings, figuring out what to do, what to discard, what has emotional value, what has actual monetary value. So those are some of the main issues that come up. And then there is the maintenance of the property. So now that the property is vacant, no one is actually living in it. It's amazing what will happen to that property's condition as it's just sitting there.
Yeah, and a thing people don't realize is, unfortunately, when we have these situations that a loved one passes away, life doesn't stop.
Right.
You'll get my condolences on the loss, a letter from the mortgage company, but they'll be like, yeah, but your mortgage payment's due.
Exactly.
You got to pay. Who's going to pay the bill?
Yep.
Mom died, dad died. Somebody's got to pay this bill. And and so you have, a client that's looking, dealing with losing a loved one.
Right.
Exactly. Going, what do I do with all this stuff? What do I do with all these personal belongings? How, it's a very overwhelming feeling of having to navigate through all of this.
And then you mentioned mortgages. A regular mortgage, as long as you're continuing to pay it, it's okay. You have some time. If it's a reverse mortgage, which happens a lot,
yes,
you're in a time crunch from the moment that person passes away, right? Because they give you a specific timeline, and they want to make sure that something happens with the property within that timeline. So that puts an additional burden on the family.
Yeah, that starts that clock quickly. And for those that aren't familiar, maybe have heard of a reverse mortgage, don't understand why. So reverse mortgages are for senior individuals. They take out, and what it is basically the debt grows. You don't have to make a mortgage payment. So the equity gets eaten away, basically. So the bank wants their money back.
Exactly.
They want their money back quickly because there's no one there to make a payment.
Exactly.
Where in a regular mortgage, if someone passes away, yes, they can continue making the regular payment. The bank cannot accelerate it, but a reverse. And we find that a lot.
Yep.
Especially when it's an older person that passed away. They might have taken out a reverse mortgage because they couldn't afford the maintenance of the property, taxes, insurance, association, especially in Miami.
Exactly.
The way things are. So they opted for a reverse mortgage, and now the beneficiaries have a clock ticking.
Exactly.
To get all this done.
Exactly. And lastly, the maintenance of the property that I was referring to, how that affects the family is that if you have overgrown grass, if you have just deteriorated state, depending on where the property is, the county is going to start getting involved.
Yep.
You're going to start getting violations and liens placed.
Yeah.
And that means that the equity is also being affected.
Absolutely. I tell people, yes, you inherit the property. You also inherit the responsibility for it. HOAs, association dues, whatever, the maintenance, cutting the grass, all of that. You inherit the property, but you inherit, in essence, the headaches that come along with it.
Exactly.
So, have you ever had a situation with a client where they thought, okay, I can list this property, I can sell it immediately or something, and and it turns out that no, or even let's say if they started the probate process, but something has happened that has kind of blocked their ability to get it sold as quickly as they would have thought.
Yes, so it happens all the time. I'll have family members that call me and they're like, okay, we're ready to list. Awesome. And I do my research, right? And I'll ask, so who is this person that's listed on the title? Well, that's my dad, but my dad passed away. I'm the daughter here. I have the will. Going back to that misconception.
Yes.
And I have to be the bearer of bad news that that's not enough. That doesn't mean that you have the authority to sell. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are willing to start the process, get the listing agreement signed, get the whole process of selling the property, getting it on the market, and getting everyone's hopes up, and then realizing that when they get to very far along the line in the transaction, in the sale, oh, we cannot sell the property yet.
Yep.
We need to get you haven't even opened the case yet.
Yeah.
And so that has happened plenty of times, unfortunately. And thankfully, again, by the time that someone is reaching out to me, if they're doing everything correctly, we will inform them and guide them through to make sure that they get their ducks in a row before they even think about selling. The other issue is that, yes, sometimes when they are in the middle of the probate proceedings, there are things that come up, whether there's beneficiaries that we didn't know about and that need to now also agree to sell the property. Mm-hmm. Those are some of the things that have come up in the past.
Yeah. And I know you and I have worked one specifically that comes to mind and definitely goes to well, why can't we sell this quickly? Well, because there was a whole battle between who was going to be the executor. And I remember when I had first reached out, I was like, oh, we have this property. We're going to put it for sale in the probate. We should be in contact soon. I think it took us a year, a year and a half, till finally I was able to tell Nordis, okay,
we're ready.
We have an executor named, which is not the norm. But again, you never know what's going to happen. When people ask me as an attorney, as a probate attorney, my favorite questions, how long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost?
Right.
And my answers are always, it depends. Mm-hmm. It depends if people are fighting, and in this case, they were. The decedent's spouse and the decedent's children, what assets there are. If it's just a property, we have other things. If we have credit, it just does all sorts of things. So, there's no set answer to give someone of like, oh yeah, we can list it, oh, we can sell. The good part is in regards to the sale, once we have the correct person, like you mentioned, they could say, oh, I'm named, in the will, or I have the will, I'm the beneficiary. But if they're not the personal representative, that's not the person that you need to speak with.
Exactly.
Exactly. The realtors, and unfortunately, there's a lot of realtors who maybe are not informed and don't know what they're doing. That's why we work with people who specialize in this. Sorry, but that's a reality, because you need to know what you're doing and what the probate process is like, and making sure you're dealing with the correct person.
Exactly.
Because maybe, yes, the daughter is the beneficiary based on what the will says, but maybe they named someone else as the executor.
Exactly.
And that's really who your client is.
Right. Absolutely. And something that also comes up, so of course, we are in South Florida. We have 60,000 real estate agents, right, that are licensed. And a lot of times, one of the challenges that we face is my cousin, my friend.
Oh, yes.
They're a realtor, right? And so one of the main challenges that I see clients face is that they don't understand how much it'll cost them legally if they don't have the right person involved.
Yes.
Right? And I'm sure you see this all the time. How many agents are constantly calling you, and attorneys have to bill for that. And so I think that that's important to highlight, is the fact that who you work with matters.
Yes, absolutely.
And a lot of these transactions take patience, compassion, we've talked about that, and skill. Knowing how to handle certain situations. That particular case also had a big caveat, which was there was an open permit.
Yes. Yes.
And working our way through that, negotiating through that, and keeping everyone still involved despite the amount of time that we had to go through getting that resolved. Mm-hmm. That takes a specific type of team.
Yeah.
On to be working with you.
Absolutely. And besides obviously the experience that you have as a realtor and obviously specializing in, handling probate matters, was there anything extra that you had to do? Is there any extra certifications or expertise that you have to be able to say, yes, I can help you with your sale of your home, doesn't have to necessarily be a probate, but specifically in the probate world, the benefit of working with someone like yourself versus mi primo, mi prima, fulanito that just got his license, 3 months ago.
Yes. So the main difference comes down to this. There are those agents that just have their license, right? And it's a very low barrier of entry, as you know.
Yes.
And there's then those agents that really treat this like a business and treat it as this is the way, whatever I do, my image, my reputation, I am thinking of my clients first. And because I do think like that, I'm also focusing on what am I learning? What training am I taking? What certifications am I obtaining to make sure that I put all those tools, all those skill sets to work for my clients? So for example, particularly for probate, I am a certified probate real estate specialist. That is a realtor designation that is given when you pass a certain course where they teach us, they train us on what are the particulars that you have to take into consideration when you're working with attorneys. What do you need to take into consideration when you're going to be communicating to the court, because there are specific things that we need to present to the court. So all of that is part of things that I'm doing on a daily basis, just being a forever student of the field to make sure that my clients are always winning and I'm not costing them money by not having that skill set. And that is the difference between working with someone that understands the process and someone that just has their license.
Yeah. And that makes the world a difference because, again, you know what goes on behind the scenes, what is required of the attorneys, what is required of the courts, how long the courts can often take to process certain things because you're involved with it on the day-to-day. So knowing that is definitely an advantage that you bring. And even to myself as a probate attorney, working with a realtor who is not familiar with the probate process, and I'm getting calls every day of, when are we closing? When are we closing? When are we closing? I'm like, hold on. This is not a normal transaction.
Right.
It's not, it doesn't always have to be, because I know sometimes people, might shy away from, it's a probate, that means it's a disaster, it's a mess. Not always.
Right.
It's not always like that, but there are certain steps, there are certain things that need to be done. So having that knowledge definitely makes a difference.
Yeah. And the main distinction I think that is relevant to make here is that a regular sale has usually the buyer and the seller, and then you have attorneys or a title company that makes that closing happen, right? It doesn't have to go through a court.
Yeah.
Whereas in probate, you're going to have to get a judge to approve that sale. And that in itself entails a lot of steps to make sure that it's done properly and in a timely manner. So yes, there could be delays, but there could also be things that go very smoothly if the right people are working on it.
That's why I give the attorney an answer always. It depends.
It depends.
It depends.
Yeah.
So where in the process should someone reach out to you if they just had a loved one pass away? They have this property now. They say, you know what? I want to sell it. I have my home. I don't need another home. I don't want to keep the headache of being a landlord. Where in the process do you come in? At what point should they reach out to you throughout all of this?
So I'm not an attorney, but I'm going to give an attorney answer. It depends.
It depends. There you go. See?
It depends. So first and foremost, I think that the first thing they're dealing with is grief. And that deserves time. They may be one of those individuals that are like, I just need to take each step from now on, and I don't want to dwell too much. I just want to get started. And they may call me right away. So it really depends. If they want to call right away, I am going to be that person that they can call now, and they're not necessarily ready for a year. That's okay. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather be there to give them the information so that they can make informed decisions, guided decisions. And then whenever they're ready, they're ready. Some people call me after they've met with their attorney. So it really depends on the family. It really depends on the urgency too. Some clients that come to me are facing foreclosure. Yeah. And so getting me to list a property right away is key, as long as we're doing it the right way, but they need to contact me right away. So it depends on the scenario.
And what tips or would you give as to what should they do before, let's say they're ready to proceed and list, but what should they do before listing the property for sale, especially if it's a probate listing?
So we have a process and a system for this, right, that we provide to our clients so that they know exactly how to go about the process of listing, and they know exactly how to do it in a structured way. So, because again, there's so many moving pieces. There are so many different people involved. We like to simplify it for them so that real estate is not a worry for them, right? So that's one of the things that we do to make it easier. But if I could think of one tip is, know who you're going to work with, and have an idea of what you're going to do with the belongings.
Yes, very important.
If you have no idea, we will guide you through. We will put resources in front of you. We will coordinate everything from A through Z to make that process easier. But it helps for them to have an idea. Do I need to discard this? Do I want to donate it? Do I want to maybe try to sell it? We are able to arrange all of that, but if they at least have an idea of what they would like to do with that, and they know what things are emotional and they want to keep, that makes the process a little easier.
Wonderful. And, you might have exactly that, a situation where they're like, I don't need all this furniture, and sometimes even nowadays, Goodwill, or the veterans or different organizations that you call to pick up, sometimes they're like, well, we only pick up certain things. We don't, we don't want.
They're very selective.
They are very selective.
Selective.
Try to donate a tube TV, like the old school TVs.
Good luck.
Nobody wants that.
Right. And there are some things that cannot even be taken to the dumpster anymore either.
Exactly. So I agree with you. I definitely think that the part of cleaning out the property, getting ready to list it, stage it, because people are going to go see it, and they're not going to, all due respect, no one's going to want to go see it with all the stuff in there.
Right.
So getting it prepped, definitely, because like I said, it's an emotional thing, especially if this is, let's say, a house that your parents lived in for 30 years, 40 years, and now they have 40 years of things, and you're like, oh my God, what do I do with all of this?
I know, right? And it's fun. It's interesting. There are families that also ask, can we just please sell it as is?
Yeah.
Get someone else to be responsible for this. And the answer is absolutely yes, as long as we are taking that into consideration when pricing it.
There you go.
But it can absolutely be done. We've sold hoarder properties before with everything inside.
Yes. And exactly, you have to then take into consideration that this new buyer, which will most likely be an investor or whatever, it's going to have to go through the hassle of disposing all these personal belongings. So if you want someone else to take it because it's like, I don't want to deal with it, I just can't right now, just have someone else take care of it. That's, like you said, it's going to go into, you have to factor that into the price and into the expense. So that's a good point to keep in mind and it is possible, but to keep that in mind.
Right.
So, all right. So I want to do a couple what we call rapid fire questions. And these are questions that families ask all the time that we get. And we can kind of just go through, give a couple quick answers, see what we can help people with. So question number 1, can I sell my parents' house immediately after they pass away? And we've learned that the answer is...
It depends.
It depends. So if it has to go through probate, not immediate, but if it doesn't have to, if they put it in a trust,
ladybird deed,
or they had joint tenants with rights of survivorship, then the answer would be yes. But again, it all depends.
Exactly.
All right. So do all properties have to go through probate?
No, we just covered that, right? Not necessarily. If it's titled a certain way, it may be that the beneficiaries are going to inherit it right away and they don't have to go through that process at all.
Exactly. Or if they did their estate planning and they have it in a trust, then no, it avoids probate. So here's a good one. What happens if there are multiple heirs? How do you deal with a situation like that?
Fun and dynamic times. It could get challenging if they don't get along. If they get along and everyone is on board, easy. I could be the point of contact person. I usually am, and I'm getting everyone to sign everything, working on, again, alongside the attorneys to make sure that we are all on the same page. So that's if there's multiple heirs, it usually doesn't present a challenge unless they're not getting along.
I agree. I always ask people at the very beginning when they ask me the question of how long is it going to take, and my answer is it depends. I go, what's the dynamic of the family? Is everybody, as I say, kumbaya?
Exactly.
The mundo, everybody's on the same page. If they are, then great. And I've had situations, I don't know, I'm sure you have as well, where it starts off that way, where everybody's, yes, we're on the same page. Or I have one right now. They are 5 heirs, and it's 3 against 2. Of the 3, one of them is a sister and 2 brothers. She's like, no, these 2 brothers, they don't want anything. They don't want anything involved. They're, and now they've changed their tune. And now it went from, no, they don't want anything. They'll sign whatever's needed to waive their interest. And now one of them is like, bueno. If I'm supposed to get some money from this, and now it's kind of complicated. It changes everything. So again, this is our answer. It depends.
It depends, yep.
Okay. So going back to talking about siblings or heirs, What happens if, let's say, one of the heirs doesn't want to sell and you're having to deal with that? How have you encountered that before? How do you deal with a situation like that?
Yes. So there's a couple of things, and it depends, right? It depends.
It's our theme.
Depende de qué. So if that person that wants to stay in the property has the ability to buy the other person out, that's one option. They can maybe do a refinance, or they have the funds. They can buy that person out. Unfortunately, if they cannot go through one of those options, it may be that they need to go through the process called partition, right?
Correct.
Where they basically have to get the court involved to order that the property be sold.
And we have had that happen a lot. Once again, everybody at the beginning starts off, kumbaya, todo mundo, everybody's in agreement. We do the probate, the property gets legally transferred to all of them. Yes, we're all going to sell, and then all of a sudden one puts the brakes on it.
Right.
No, I don't want to sell. The house has memories, mom and dad, and no. And then that's when we're like, well, you're going to have to sue
Exactly.
your brother, your sister, whoever, and force a partition of the property. And even in the partitions, we have to have a realtor come in and sell, because basically the court's like, no, the property has to be sold.
Right.
So, and it's, unfortunately, it's an ugly situation. You don't want to have to sue your family.
And it costs them, the family, money. So there's loss of equity there.
Absolutely. And I had one case several years ago, and the brother was just being difficult throughout the entire process. Everything was like putting up roadblocks, and just for no reason, no legal basis, just being difficult. Finally, the judge tells him one day at a hearing, the judge goes, the more that you see my face and I have to see you in this courtroom, the more money those attorneys there are making, and you're giving up of your inheritance from your father. Because he had no legal basis. He was just, it was just one of those, I don't want to agree on principle.
Right.
And principle costs you money sometimes.
Sometimes they need to hear those words from someone completely unbiased so that they can understand the intricacies of that, right? Like the implications of them just arguing.
Absolutely. And, these are transactions that, they're not just transactions. We're not just selling a regular piece of property like you do with your other closings.
Right.
These are people that are selling a house, selling a property, also dealing with loss. Okay. So in order to wrap this up, what has this experience of dealing with probate listings taught you about working with families during these difficult moments?
Compassion matters. Empathy matters. Kindness matters. And that's really, again, the reason why I could have chosen many other specialties in real estate. I really could have, right? But I appreciate being in a space where I really do get to make a difference, because I was just having this conversation an hour ago. Oftentimes when I'm with this family, I am literally their grief counselor at that time. I'm the only person that will actually sit there, listen to what they're going through, and not necessarily be attached to the outcome, because they may decide to keep that property. They may decide to, who knows, right? So it's the space of, I've learned that all of those things, compassion, empathy, kindness, really makes a difference. And I get to do that every day because I specialize in probate. And in regular sales, it matters too. But imagine, again, we're dealing with someone that just went through a loss. And that's a big emotional toll. So that's what I've learned. I've learned that I get to be in a space where there's a human aspect of it that makes a total difference in the outcome for that family.
And I totally agree with you. And that very much so is also part and parcel the reason why I opted to specialize in probate and estate planning. Personally having gone through it, having lost both of my parents, but also having clients come in at their lowest point, having lost a loved one, whether it was expected due to old age or an illness, or completely unexpected.
Right.
And then now they're left like, what do I do? Because again, life doesn't stop. Once the overwhelmness of it passes, life continues, and you still have to deal with going through all of these personal belongings, also all of these personal effects, getting this property ready to be sold, and sitting there and dealing with all of this.
Right.
So I absolutely agree with you. You can't just see this as another transaction. Definitely that aspect of compassion, empathy is a big factor.
And the educating piece, what you're doing right here too, right? This is going out to the community, and in our community in South Florida, there's a huge gap between those that know and don't know.
Yes.
And a lot of times the families are not prepared and they have to go through probate processes because they don't have the information.
Exactly.
So that's also a piece that I really do feel passionate about, is bringing this type of information out to people so that they can be prepared. You don't have to go through. Probate is not an ugly process. I mean,
It's not.
it ensures
doesn't
that
have
things,
to be.
it doesn't have to be, and it could ensure that things get done the right way. But there's also ways to avoid it, and they could be less costly.
So share with us how anybody out there that's going through this can get a hold of you so they can contact you with any probate listings.
Thank you. So anywhere on social media, of course. So at the Forcade Group for Instagram, they can go to my website. So we have theforcadegroup.com, and you'll find my contact information and my team's contact information all throughout there.
Wonderful. And thank you so much, Nordis, for
Thank
joining us
you.
again. And for all of you, if you are going through a difficult time, please reach out to either one of us. We're here to help you and inform you and guide you through this process. And I hope you've enjoyed and found this information valuable and useful. And stay tuned for more episodes of Casa, Familia, and Legacy.